My name is Arisha. I'm a mental health professional, and I have struggled with depression for close to 20 years now. I didn't understand what childhood depression was at the time. I was about 8 years old the first time I started experiencing depression. Most children don't know what their depressive symptoms are. For me, it was like I just wanted to be alone all the time, and I just felt really sad, and I didn't know why I was sad, and I didn't feel like there was anyone that I could go to say, like, this is what I'm feeling, this is how I feel when you do X, Y, and Z, or when you say X, Y, and Z. I didn't have that language because it wasn't modeled to me at the time. So, I just had a lot of feelings that I just held inside. And I really didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand even really what feelings were. So I just made the assumption that there was something wrong with me. And through me having that belief, it started to play out in my relationships with other people. I didn't really feel connected to anyone. I didn't feel connected to my family. I didn't feel connected to my friends. I didn't understand that I didn't understand what was missing. And I would always say over and over again, I don't have any friends, I don't have any friends. And of course there were my classmates, and I did have friends and people that I spent time with that I would invite to my birthday, things like that. But what I was really saying was that I don't feel close to anyone. But I didn't have that language. And so it was just completely dismissed, because if you looked at my life, I did have friends. I did look like I had good relationships in my life, but the feelings were missing. So that went undiagnosed for many years until I had my first significant depressive episode when I was 13 years old and I went to high school. I had a really hard time transitioning from middle school to high school. I was in the same school. I went to a charter school since like 4th grade to 8th grade. So I didn't really have to make new friends or meet new people or anything like that, because I kind of just went through that school system. So going from middle school to high school was a really big adjustment for me, and I still struggle with change to this day. At that time it was just a lot, and I was very depressed. My grades slipped. I was a pretty good student. I was an A student, and I was doing terribly in school. I couldn't put myself out there. Like, I literally had the worst, like, it's like a movie, the way my first day of high school went. Like, I ate alone in the bathroom, like, dramatic. Yeah, it was pretty sad. My first day of school was pretty sad, I'm not even gonna lie. For a high schooler, you know, everything is really terrible that time. Eventually, I was able to adjust. I switched high schools and I went to a smaller high school, which seemed to help. I knew more people. So I feel like that was helpful for me, and the fact that it was a little bit smaller helped a lot as well. From there, I started using drugs and alcohol to cope with my pain and my feelings. And I just told myself it was, you know, this is my time to like be a rebellious teenager. And I'm just having fun, and, you know, I was doing really well in school, so I felt like, you know, there was nothing wrong with what I was doing. And I wasn't sneaking out or doing anything like extra. It was just, I would go out and I would drink. And I think I started using marijuana when I was 15. I started drinking when I was 15 as well. And I used to drink a lot, like not a significant amount in one sitting, but I would drink frequently and often. That was basically my only way that I knew how to relax. And it had significant effects on my brain. Of course, alcohol is a depressant, so it definitely didn't help, considering the fact that I was already struggling with depression. So from there, I went to college, and I worked all throughout college as much as I could. I was pretty independent, like a lot of people in college, like taking care of myself. I had financial aid. I went to school in Florida, so I was really fortunate to have the help that I needed as far as like tuition, and I just had to cover my living expenses. And during that time, I continued to use drugs and alcohol to cope with my pain and my feelings, and I just used school as the way to justify the way my life was, pretty much. You know, a lot of students, there's a culture of students when you're in college, like, we stay up all night at the library and we take Adderall and X, Y, and Z, and that's just the norm. You just have to do whatever you have to do to get through the semester. So I, again, didn't feel like anything was really wrong with me, or not with me, but I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with how my life was going. And I went into a really dark place during that time, and things were really hard for me, but I wasn't able to, again, articulate it. I had no concept of what was going on because I was drinking and smoking to ease the pain. I didn't go to therapy for the first time until my final semester in college as a senior. And I went and it was great, but then I wasn't able to continue going because I graduated. So from there, I struggled a little bit to find my place, to figure out what I was doing, like a lot of people do after school. And I attended grad school a year later, got my master's in social work. And, you know, the old habits die hard, you know? So I was doing the same things pretty much, in a more balanced way, definitely. But it was the same flavor, pretty much. Drugs and alcohol to get through the semester by any means necessary. And I've been doing that for a long time. And I feel like now I've come to a place, I'm 27, I can't use drugs and alcohol anymore due to my mental illness. And it's come time for me to face myself and face my pain and my circumstances. I've been feeling really alone in the world for a long time, very isolated. I was actually listening to a podcast. I'll try to share it with you if I can find it. And it was talking about how people struggle, how people cope with loneliness. Like, what do you do when you're lonely? And I thought about that answer, and I really had to think, and I realized that I don't think there's ever been a time or a place or an activity that I've done without feeling lonely. Everything that I do, I feel loneliness inside. That's like my norm. And that is a lot to carry. This last year was pretty much when everything kind of flipped itself on its head for me and crashed and burned. And that's when I was forced to face myself and, you know, make life changes. It was definitely the hardest year of my life. And when you're going through something like that, the hope is that you have support around you and people are able to see you and give you what you need during that time to help lift you up. But the truth is, so many people just don't understand. And even if they do understand, they don't have the capacity to give to you in that way. A lot of people, especially in the Black community, are stuck in survival mode. And if you are barely hanging on yourself, it's like nobody else can receive anything from you. You don't have anything to give. I went through one of the darkest periods of my life without the support that I needed. And I definitely had friends that were there for me, but there's only so much a friend can do for you when you're in a place like that. And if people don't have an understanding of mental health, they don't know how to show up for you. I was lucky because I had friends who are mental health professionals themselves. So I really lucked up. But even still, there was more that I needed, that I lacked. And I I struggled. And I'm still struggling. My fight with this mental illness is not over and may never be over. It may be something that I struggle with for the rest of my life. When mental illness isn't treated and it just continues for years, it just becomes more and more severe. I got to the point where I lost the will to live. And I've had suicidal thoughts before. I've never wanted to do it. I've always felt like I had to, or else, that was the only option, pretty much. But this past year was different. I was willing to do it, and it was really, really hard. And I'm really lucky because I went to school and I have the skills and the tools to help save myself. There's a lot of people who don't have that. And there's a lot of people that we have lost that didn't have that. So I feel like coming out of this experience in my life, I wanted to help those people that aren't as lucky as me and will come to a time when life beats you down. Everybody goes through it at one time or another. And I created a planner centered around wellness to help deal with those times whenever they may come. And if a time hasn't come, it's the perfect time to build your skills so that if a time should ever come where you're in crisis and you feel alone and you're struggling with emotional trauma, depression, anxiety, you have the help that you need. You have the tools that you need. I really believe that we're all here to help each other. And if my story and my pain can help at least one person, then maybe it'll be for something. So I'm going to share my link. It's a digital planner. And I hope that if you choose to try it out, that it serves you well. And I'd like to talk more and share more about my story and my journey with my mental illness and how I manage my wellness as much as I can. So if that's something that you would be interested in, I hope that you'll subscribe and join me on this journey. And even if not, if you feel like you have a friend or a family member who needs to know that they're not alone in their struggle with a mental illness, share this video with them and let them know that there is hope for tomorrow. I can't be an example because, girl, Lord knows I'm still struggling. But maybe we can struggle together.